Welcome to a decade that redefined movies as we know them. An era where concepts were high and the budgets were higher. A time when technology allowed for the full reinvention of genres. A period when action heroes evolved, blockbusters nearly collapsed, and a revolution began in the shadows of Hollywood. This was the 90s. This was the end of the century. The last time we met up with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone, we found the icons embarking on diametrically opposed trajectories. Schwarzenegger had matched and outdone everything his opponent had accomplished. Stallone was struggling as he found that neither of his two iconic roles could be seen as sure box office hits. As the summer of 1993 approached, the two opponents were going head-to-head at the box office. But as we will see, that summer would change not only their lives, but the whole movie industry. Despite the losses resulting from Rambo 3 and Lock Up, Carolco Pictures were still very much keen to be in the Stallone business. The action star box office potential, though diminished, was still viewed as a valuable commodity worth betting on. The Rambo star action lead was associated with 3 projects, all of them sharing a common trait. They would all play a key role in Sylvester Stallone's reinvention. The first would be an ill-advised third attempt at comedy that would pair Sly with John Candy in Bartholomew vs. Neff, a comedy about feuding neighbors to be written and directed by John Hughes. Given Stallone's previous comedy outings, perhaps it was a blessing in disguise that the project was dropped. The second was a futuristic sci-fi horror titled Isobar, which told the story of a genetically created monster who breaks free on a high-speed train. The movie was pitched to both Ridley Scott and Roland Emmerich and would have starred Sylvester Stallone and Kim Basinger. That also didn't happen, leaving sci-fi fans to wonder what might have been. The third project, a 9-year gestating concept titled Gale Force, pitched as Die Hard in a Hurricane, would have found Rocky's creator as an ex-Navy SEAL fighting against a group of modern pirates who attacked the coastal town during a large catastrophic hurricane. Through several rewrites and many changes, the project would end up being titled Cliffhanger, a high-stakes mountain adventure with a $70 million budget and Carolco's winning ticket for the summer of '93. The movie had a relatively simple plot. Stallone's Gabe Walker is recovering from a traumatic mountain climbing experience when he receives a fake distress call and has to die hard his way out of a situation involving a group of international thieves looking for 3 suitcases full of cash that went missing after a botched mid-air heist. The premise straddled between a 1980s pure action vehicle and a 1990s high-concept title and offered Stallone the chance to reinvent himself by toning down the over-the-topness just a notch and allowing him to become John McClane's heir apparent. The title was helmed by Finnish filmmaker Renny Harlin, whose mixed track record at the box office was countered by his success in directing Die Hard 2. Production was plagued with issues, namely Carolco Pictures' own financial woes, which resulted in 2 production shutdowns, on-set tensions, Stallone's salary cut, and a ballooning budget driven by the treacherous Dolomite-based shooting and practical effects. Despite these challenges, the film maintained its focus on practical stunt work. Cliffhanger was advertised as a pure action vehicle and seen as Stallone's comeback. The movie relied on traditional stunts, including the costliest aerial stunt ever performed, as opposed to expensive visual effects. After an out-of-competition debut at Cannes, the movie opened in the US on May 28, 1993, securing the first spot during its first 2 weekends. The positive tone of the reviews, though some aspects of the movie were criticized, were some of the best the Stallone title had received in years. Critics praised the spectacular action sequences and acknowledged Stallone's more restrained performance. But Cliffhanger's dominance was cut short by an intrusive little movie about dinosaurs that would end up being a dominating force in 1993. Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park would go on to rewrite the rules of summer blockbusters, leaving Stallone's mountain adventure in its prehistoric dust. When all was said and done, and ignoring the T-Rex intrusion, Cliffhanger proved to be Stallone's biggest commercial success in over 8 years, nabbing an impressive $84 million in the US alone and a global cumulative revenue of $255 million. Despite this impressive performance, the verdict was still out on the movie's ability to restore Sly's image. Yes, it did help to revitalize Stallone's career, and his portrayal of Gabe Walker as a common man, a la John McClane, was far removed from the characters the actor portrayed in the past. Though you could argue that seeing the man behind Rambo climbing his way through the Colorado Rockies during a blizzard wearing only a t-shirt is mildly unrealistic, to say the least. Also, competition from other, more linear and cerebral action titles released that same year, such as In the Line of Fire and The Fugitive, would isolate Cliffhanger as an outdated and out-of-touch title, the one that would later be reappreciated as a last hurrah for a certain style of action filmmaking. In my opinion, Cliffhanger is truly an outstanding action title that excels both narratively and technically. The film's setting with its majestic mountain landscapes provides a visually stunning backdrop for intense action sequences that are both gripping and well executed. On par with the excellent Copland, it boasts what many consider to be Stallone's best performance of the decade. As Gabe Walker, he's believable rather than invincible, balancing the seriousness of the subject matter with well-executed light-hearted moments. John Lithgow shines as the villainous Eric Quaylen, bringing a level of menace that elevates the tension throughout the film. Somehow, there's an air of freshness that elevates the title and makes it a true action gem. The goodwill amassed by Stallone was squandered by overexposure and the failure of his other 1993 release, Demolition Man, to continue the critical and commercial success he had earned by the beginning of the summer. But for a while at least, Stallone was back on top of the proverbial mountain, standing tall against the winds of change that were sweeping through Hollywood's action landscape. In the world of blockbuster filmmaking, as Jeff Goldblum's Ian Malcolm famously observed in Jurassic Park, life finds a way. This sentiment perfectly captures the curious journey of Last Action Hero, a film that began as an ambitious screenplay titled Extremely Violent, penned by writers Zach Penn and Adam Leff. The original script was a clever spoof of Hollywood action films, particularly targeting the tropes popularized by screenwriter Shane Black in his hits like Lethal Weapon and The Last Boy Scout. At its emotional core, the script was a poignant story about a boy coping with his father's cancer death by immersing himself in ultra-violent action movies starring an indestructible hero, a figure who, unlike his father, could never die and never leave him. Studios immediately recognized the concept's potential, but understood that major rewrites would be necessary for mainstream marketing success. The project was developed with Arnold Schwarzenegger in mind, who was then at the absolute pinnacle of his career following the phenomenal success of Terminator 2: Judgment Day. High-profile directors including Robert Zemeckis and Steven Spielberg were approached before John McTiernan ultimately accepted the challenge. McTiernan seemed the perfect choice to helm this meta-action comedy. After all, he had revolutionized the action genre with 1988's Die Hard, had previously collaborated with Schwarzenegger on 1987's Predator, and cemented his A-list director status with 1990's The Hunt for Red October. For Columbia Pictures, the combination of the planet's hottest star and a director with an impeccable track record seemed like a guaranteed path to box office gold during the summer of '93. For Schwarzenegger himself, the project represented an opportunity to showcase his range beyond straightforward action roles and comedy. His willingness to parody his own screen persona demonstrated his supreme confidence and unassailable stature within the industry. But trouble soon followed. The production became plagued by endless script rewrites and on-set tensions. The budget ballooned to an enormous $85 million, not including the extensive promotional campaign that would famously include the first movie advertisement in space. Throughout these challenges, Columbia remained stubbornly committed to the 18th of June 1993 release date. As production pressures mounted, the film's editing was rushed to meet this inflexible deadline, a decision that completely disregarded the looming competition from Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park. Columbia's attitude toward this potential threat bordered on arrogance. The studio reasoned that, excluding Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, released in 1989, Spielberg hadn't delivered a genuine blockbuster hit in nearly a decade. Finally, on the 18th of June, just 1 week after Jurassic Park's record-breaking debut, Last Action Hero was released to general audiences. The film follows teenager Danny Madigan, a young movie fan grieving his father's death, who finds solace in the action films of Jack Slater, played by Schwarzenegger. When given a magical ticket by an old projectionist, Danny is transported into the fictional world of Slater's latest movie, Jack Slater 4. There, he meets his hero and tries to convince him that they're both inside a movie. The title opened in second place at the box office, dwarfed by Spielberg's dinosaur juggernaut movie, and ultimately failed to break even domestically, ending its run with just $50 million on its $85 million investment. Critics were divided. Whilst many praised the concept, they criticized the execution, generally agreeing that whilst the movie had entertaining moments, it felt messy and unfocused. But critics, and a mighty impressive roaring T-Rex, can't shoulder all the blame for Last Action Hero's downfall. Columbia's mismanagement takes the lion's share of the blame, but timing was also a significant culprit. Audiences in 1993 simply weren't ready for such meta-driven narrative that blurred the lines between reality and fantasy. Scream, the first major commercial success of its kind, was still years away. Whilst Who Framed Roger Rabbit had succeeded with a similar concept, it proved to be the exception rather than the rule, with similar films like Cool World, The Purple Rose of Cairo, and The Adventures of Baron Munchausen all underperforming at the box office. Viewers at the time certainly enjoyed parodies, but their expectations were shaped by the broad approach of films like Airplane from the Zucker, Abrahams, and Zucker team. The success of Naked Gun and Hot Shot franchises confirmed this preference. As a result, Last Action Hero existed in an awkward middle ground. It arrived too soon to mock the 80s action tropes effectively and too early to capture the evolving cultural sensibilities of the 1990s. Over the past 3 decades, critics and fans have significantly warmed to the movie, and it's easy to understand why. Last Action Hero was an action comedy ahead of its time that subverted and deconstructed an entire genre with flair and clear intent. Both satirical and serious, the movie features one of Schwarzenegger's most nuanced performances and an outstanding soundtrack. With a less rushed production, a more polished script, and a better release date, audiences might now discuss this film with the same awe and admiration reserved for Terminator 2. Instead, the immediate effects of Last Action Hero and Schwarzenegger's seemingly unstoppable winning streak. Combined with Sylvester Stallone's modest comeback around the same time, the Austrian oak found himself saying hasta la vista to his long-held title as Hollywood's de facto action hero. As you may have guessed, the summer of '93 marked a pivotal moment in Hollywood history. A turning point that would forever change the careers of two cinema's most iconic action stars. Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger, who had dominated the box office throughout the 1980s, found themselves navigating a rapidly evolving film landscape that was quickly outgrowing their larger-than-life personas. Schwarzenegger attempted to recover from the disappointing Last Action Hero with 1994's True Lies, a film that reunited him with the Terminator director James Cameron and briefly set a record as the most expensive movie ever made. However, this momentary comeback proved short-lived. The once unstoppable action icon soon found himself in a period of career reinvention, marked by an increasingly patchy track record of hits and spectacular misses. Stallone fared no better. Despite the brief resurgence brought by Cliffhanger in '93, his 1990s output consistently failed to recapture his earlier magic. The mid-decade saw him starring in box office underperformers like Judge Dredd and Assassins in 1995, followed by the largely forgotten Daylight in 1996. All failed attempts to maintain his action hero status. By the late 1990s, the legendary rivalry between Stallone and Schwarzenegger had effectively dissolved, not with a bang, but with a whimper. Their box office impact had dramatically declined, a casualty of a genre in profound transformation. The Die Hard effect had fundamentally reshaped action cinema. Audiences were no longer content with invincible, muscle-bound heroes who defied all laws of physics. Instead, they craved more relatable protagonists and increasingly sophisticated storytelling. The nascent CGI industry promised to revolutionize the movie-going experience, and viewers became eager to see how digital effects could enhance action sequences. The new generation of lead actors emerged. Keanu Reeves, Tom Cruise, and Sandra Bullock offered a more nuanced approach to on-screen heroism. The Die Hard on ... concept became a template for countless blockbusters. Speed, Air Force One, The Rock, and Con Air all followed this blueprint, featuring everyman heroes in extraordinary circumstances. Ironically, whilst traditional 80s-style movies seemed to be fading, their spirit found an unexpected resurrection. Michael Bay emerged as a new torchbearer of over-the-top patriotic spectacle. From 1995 onwards, he delivered massively budget ensemble action films that audiences enthusiastically embraced. The one-man army concept also evolved. Will Smith and Nicolas Cage represented a new breed of action star, less muscular, more relatable, but still capable of carrying high-octane narratives. The genre continuously reinvented itself, driven by technological advances and by changing audiences' expectations. As the new millennium approached, the cyclical nature of pop culture worked its magic. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson emerged as the heir apparent to Schwarzenegger and Stallone, embodying a modern version of the invincible hero. Both original icons found ways to adapt. Stallone experienced a remarkable renaissance in the 2010s and even earned an Academy Award nomination for his seventh portrayal of Rocky Balboa. Schwarzenegger's post-gubernatorial Hollywood return was less triumphant, but he remained a beloved figure. Their mutual legacy was perhaps best celebrated in The Expendables franchise, a loving tribute to the 1980s action cinema released in 2010, which brought both stars together in a nostalgic blaze of glory. The tropes they pioneered never truly disappeared, thanks to the power of nostalgia and the circular nature of cinema. These iconic action movie conventions continue to find new life in contemporary films. Whatever the future holds, the titles of the 1980s will always find an audience. They captured a unique moment in movie history, a set of particular aesthetics, a specific kind of charm that transcends generations. The legacies of Stallone and Schwarzenegger are forever etched into the DNA of action cinema. And action heroes' legacies are indeed forever. Because as a certain famous cyborg once said,
I'll be back.